Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome back to Slightly Dogmatic. As you know, Dan and I have opinions. We may be slightly dogmatic about them. Now, it's been a little bit since our last episode. We mean for this to be weekly, and it hasn't been so far. That's primarily because we were dealing, or I was dealing with the death in the family. What is it now? It's going on 2 weeks, coming up on the second week here. So my grandfather died. So we've been kind of handling that. I was very close with him, essentially living with him towards the end to take care of him. It was kind of unexpected. So that's what we're handling right now. You can expect there to be some sort of content in the podcast going forward. Not going forward, but at some point in the future, within which we'll talk about him. And just, he loved movies. And so I'd like to talk about some movies that he liked at some point. And, I don't know, do something thematic about him. Talk about him and his memory. He was a pretty interesting guy. So that is coming down the pipeline. But otherwise, sorry for the delay. We want to be consistent about this for our own sake and for anyone who might care to listen. So sorry about that. But regardless, since then, I had a chance before he died, and since then to watch some stuff. I think Dan, I put him on to something. And by the way, I'm Jamison, and I'm here with my co-host Dan. And I think what we're going to want to start talking about here to begin with is I Care a Lot. Yeah, Dan, do you want to give the rundown, or should I?
Yeah, I could give the rundown. Yeah, I guess
Just like the premise.
there's a lot to say about this movie, but the basic premise of this movie, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, basically the movie's featuring Rosamund Pike of Gone Girl fame, and she is playing a con artist who basically scams elderly people and basically takes guardianship of them, and she's
It's a real
able
life scam
to,
that people pull. Sorry, but yeah, like this is,
yeah.
is an actual thing. This is based on like a real thing. This is a John Oliver story. You should definitely watch on it. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, she basically takes all of their assets, including their house, anything they have in their bank accounts. Well, in the movie, she takes like diamonds from someone that they're holding in like a bank safe deposit, things of that nature, and she gains ownership of them, claiming that they're not fit to take care of themselves. And basically, one day she fucks with the wrong woman who has someone associated with her who is very upset that they are put, or the person they are associated with is put in this elderly care facility wrongfully.
Has their independence totally stripped from them. That person is Peter Dinklage.
Yep. hmm
Yeah,
yeah, that's like a basic summary.
yeah,
We could talk about how we feel about it.
yeah. And I like okay. So, in the interest of full transparency, in any way you feel like this conversation might feel contrived or that we might have had it before, it's going to be because we have. We talked about this in full, along with a number of other things, uh, in a recording that we tried to do a couple days ago, and it was entirely on me. I am a dunce, and I did not realize that my noise gate was far too aggressive, and ended up cutting out a lot of my audio. So it was essentially unlistenable. It would cut off the beginning or end of my sentences, or even in the middle if I happened to get more quiet in the middle of the sentence. It was far too aggressive, but I think I've got it now at a very reasonable level. Shouldn't affect our audio. I've done extensive testing, as Dan is sure tired of tonight. So hopefully that won't be an issue. But yeah, it's a very compelling premise. It's something that I felt very strongly about because it's dealing with some as someone who interacted very closely with their grandparents, and I still do with another of my grandparents who is also getting up there in age, not quite as capable as they once were. This whole idea, and I guess anyone who has grandparents could empathize with the idea of just being totally enraged at the idea of someone taking away that person's independence, basically everything that they worked for in their life in the interest of their own personal profit. And that's the scam. That's what gets run in real life. And it's totally dependent on like the system of complicity. Obviously, there's a scammer, then there's usually like a doctor of some sort that is complicit. And the beginning of this movie is essentially showing that. It's showing that it's not just Rosamund Pike. It's Rosamund Pike. It's a crooked doctor. It's a judge that might. You're not really sure how much they know. The movie seems to suggest that this judge, at least, excuse me, doesn't isn't aware of the scam that's being run,
Yeah, I
And
got the impression that it wasn't the judge wasn't acting out of malice, but
yeah,
more of being incompetent.
yeah, they have good intentions, but fail to see how the system could be abused, and that Rosamund Pike is such a convincing, malicious actor, as in within like the context of the story, that he thinks that she actually has these old people's best interests at heart, and it's not the case. So it's a very compelling idea. It's kind of billed as a dark comedy that Rosamund Pike, totally amoral con artist, is going to clash with Peter Dinklage, who's like a traditional mob boss, and who's going to win out because she crossed him, and stand for, and so on and so on. And the unfortunate thing is that the first third of this movie is pretty strong. I would think. I think that we can agree on that, Dan. Like they set it up very strong. They have Macon Blair at the beginning, who's like kind of like a revenge movie staple. If you like Jeremy Saulnier's movies, it's a very similar. Like he's playing a very similar role that he plays in those, and they establish like they really portray that pathos really strongly to tell you to really get you to hate Rosamund Pike. It really is effective, which is also why then you get a little bit of whiplash when they really try to sell you on how sweet she is with her girlfriend, and try to convince you that like she has a soft side, but it's literally only with her girlfriend. She doesn't really treat anyone with any kind of measure of respectability or anything. And the first third, you kind of buy into, right, Dan?
Yeah, if I had to say there was a strong part of the movie, I would say it was the first third. Uh, I wouldn't say it was like strong. Like even like the first third, I wouldn't say is like a great movie, but it's I guess what I would say like acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
But I just feel like the movie takes a huge dive in quality after like that first act. Uh, like we can get into how we feel about it, but
Yeah, we're gonna be talking about full spoilers here. Like, I mean, if you want to watch it, you should watch it. It's not something that I would highly recommend. I think that it's ultimately pretty disappointing. I think the biggest problem is that it just doesn't competently fully I don't even know. It doesn't fulfill its potential. It's a lot of wasted potential. It's some so like I said, that first 30, you're totally engaged. You're like, okay, I don't like Rosalind Pike. She's a terrible person. I want her to get her come up. It seems like it's going to be a terrible person accidentally serving justice to another terrible person, and that's going to be Peter Dinklage, uh, totally fucking over Rosalind Pike one way or another, for what he's done to who is later revealed to be his mother, who has had an assumed identity that is designed to make her seem isolated and to sever connection to him, which is why Rosamund Pike chooses her, not knowing that Peter Dinklage is who he is. And it's pretty. It seems like it's going in a really interesting way in terms of just kind of being like a satisfying revenge fantasy, where she pushes back in like a really egotistical way. She's in an entitled way. She's she kind of they try to buy her off basically with uh, with what's his name, Chris Messina, who is like kind of like a crooked lawyer. And there's some interesting courtroom scenes there where you kind of see the dynamic of like how hard it is to undo guardianship once it's established, which is also how it is in real life, where it is where guardianship is easy to assume in the first place, relatively speaking, obviously. And she kind of blows it off. She tries to scam them out of as much money as she can. It's kind of like her natural instinct. She isn't really intimidated by the prospect until kind of things come on later, and then eventually she comes head to head with Peter Dinklage because they're just tired of screwing around with her, and it seems like it's gonna kind of reach its natural conclusion where Peter Dinklage is like, she tries to talk her way out of it. She tries to make a deal, and Peter Dinklage is kind of just like, you know what, screw it. Like I'm tired of dealing with you. Just kill her. Make it look like an accident. She has a little bit of like collateral hanging over his head, but he's just kind of like done with it. And at that point, it seems kind of refreshing. You're like, oh, cool. So this is gonna be like breaking any of those tropes. She's not gonna like weasel out of this, and it's gonna just kind of like, yeah, see, she finally like met her match, and she just couldn't overcome it. She tried to call his bluff, and it turns out he wasn't bluffing. And so the other issue that comes it basically falls apart after that point. The other issue that comes into play is that you're supposed to believe that these are like some mobsters that have survived everything. They have they've managed to fake their own deaths to escape from Chicago, wherever they're from, to then arrive in Rosamund Pike's town and set up shop to like install Peter Dinklage as some sort of CEO. And then he he and his thugs are just totally incompetent. He just ends up looking like a essentially a child. Like, and I don't mean that to be a dig at him being a little person. It's like his character is literally super one dimensional and is just he whines when he doesn't get what he wants. It's kind of like Kylo Ren in the first of the Disney Star Wars movies in Episode 7. He just throws a fit. He just throws things all over the room. Um, his goons are supposed to be intimidating, but you know they're totally like comical in how they fuck up, and they just fall for like the most simple slapstick like barriers that are put up in front of them. The way they try to kill Rosamund Pike is that they try to like, and it's like, you know, oh, it kind of makes sense. You're like, oh, they're gonna make it look like she killed herself by accident, drunk driving. So they like, you know, they pour vodka down her throat, but not enough to like, you know, render her unconscious for more than like a minute. Or actually, she was like sedated, and then they pour vodka down her throat, but then she like wakes up midway through. They do this whole setup where they jack up her car, put a brick on the gas, and have her drive off into a quarry that's flooded. And it's like, you know, those things are incredibly deep. She's gonna float down. She's got her hands tied up. I think. No, I don't even think she has her hands tied up.
I don't think so.
No, she doesn't, because they want to make it look like it was a real thing. So they do all that. They go through all this trouble. She falls in the water, and she lives. She manages to swim her way out. And I thought, because I don't know why I gave this movie such a benefit of the doubt, that you know they're gonna be waiting on the shore, and they're gonna be like, "What? You didn't think we were going to make sure that you died, and then like shoot her or something?" That was damn. Like, you know, that's like a once again, like, you know, gonna subvert our expectations one more time. And that's not what happened.
Yeah, there's a lot of things wrong with this movie. I feel like there were like a lot of like huge leaps in like logic, which I don't think is completely unacceptable in movies because you know it's a movie. You kind of have to like, suspend reality
Yeah, and something like this
to
you want to
some
buy in.
degree.
Like
Yeah,
ideally, like if you're engaged with the movie otherwise, you'll give them the benefit of the doubt. And I was like
yeah,
almost prepared to in a lot of time in this movie.
yeah. So like you kind of said the mobsters being incompetent. I'm like, so they basically going guns blazing, trying to rescue Peter Dinklage's mom. They just rush in with their guns, start attacking people, which I feel like mobsters in real life wouldn't just go and killing people when they're trying to. I guess generally, I guess like a movie also doesn't have to be realistic, but wouldn't you want to keep a low profile when your little person boss who faked his death years ago is, you know, living under another identity? You're not exactly wanting to draw attention to yourself. So that really didn't make sense to me, and it was kind of jarring.
That's like also presented as
Um,
like they're them that being their main motivation. Like that's Peter Dinklage's motivation is to keep a low profile. He has this whole contrived process through which he sees his mother occasionally, and so him going into the nursing home is supposed to be him trying to keep it low key, and eventually he kind of lets her get caught very close to him, like to being reunited with him because he
yeah,
doesn't want to risk exposing himself. But it's just like there's like and they kind of sell it as being like, oh yeah, this is good, like they have a plan. It's basically like a heist in a nursing home, which is like kind of a cool concept because they kind of show that's a very high security nursing
it was a
home.
heist for like 2 minutes.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
and it's like and like literally like the first thing went wrong and they're like, oh okay, but guess we better start tasing and then shooting people, and then they almost make it out, and then it's like a very like slapstick thing of just like the guy walks out the front door with Peter Dinklage's mom, who's played by Diane Weist, and she is like totally fucking wasted. It's a shame. And it's just like Rosamund Pike's like, oh hi, and then her girlfriend hits him over the head with like a folding chair. It's like a
Yeah,
wrestling move. It's ridiculous.
yeah. I didn't buy it because I know you called it a dark comedy before, or it was trying to be, but I feel like it was almost unintentionally funny,
Hmm.
where it wasn't meant to be
Wait,
comical at
you
all.
didn't buy Rosamund Pike's character turning into John Wick in like the last act of the movie?
Oh my god, exactly. So that's another issue I have with the movie is so Rosamund Pike is basically just a scam artist conning older people who generally have nothing going for them in terms of protections.
She's
So
healthy.
how
She's
do
not shown to be like an athlete. She's not like a former Navy SEAL or anything.
yeah, how do you go from being like a small time crook basically to deciding that you want to fuck with the Russian mob and you are fully aware of how dangerous they are, but her character shows no concern for her safety or the safety of anybody around her. So that's just like another I feel like a leap in logic that
Yeah.
the movie took,
Like you
where I
buy
guess
it, you buy. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, like they kind of hint that that's part of like her personality, where she has like some type of trauma from like her childhood because they show her mother for like 5 seconds
Yeah,
and
like
she's
the mob threatens her, and
clearly
she's
like
like,
heated.
"That's funny. You think I
Yeah,
care about her? Fuck that bitch." Um,
yeah, that's like the extent of her background
it
of like
literally
of
might
her
be verbatim the
character.
line. Like she's literally just
Yeah,
like, "Yeah,
something
I
about
fucking
her
hate my
mom
mom."
being a sociopath and um like they drop like hints of that,
Hmm.
but not enough to be convincing in any way or form, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the really it's like initially I bought it because I thought this was going to pay off when she turns down the money to be paid off and drop it, continue on with her scams. But she's kind of shown to be bullheaded and arrogant, and she's like, no, I think I can get more out of this. And she demands it, and they say, no, sorry, that's not happening. They leave. And that's the moment where she kind of goes, I think if I'm remembering right, she kind of checks herself and was like, oh, like, did I screw up here? And um, you can tell she starts to get scared towards the end. But it's just, they kind of sell her becoming John Wick. And I wish I was exaggerating there, but there really is like a John Wick sequence where she, like, and like sedating them. And it's just, there's been nothing to show there's nothing shown that suggests that she should have those abilities. I was like initially Dan and I were talking about it, or I was talking about it with my family after we watched it, and I was like, I would buy it more if like her girlfriend it turned out was like, because her girlfriend's always following around and kind of acts like her bodyguard, kind of like fends people off. So I would have bought it if it was like, oh yeah, she's like the physical one, like Rosamund Pike works the system. Her girlfriend is like, athlete. And I think she was in fucking, I think the Vin Diesel movie. I think she's like the quote unquote like female lead. She's like the one major woman in that when it's not just Vin Diesel like masturbating on screen. Um, and anyways, it's like I would have bought that more so. But then she's kind of like,
She's more pathetic. She's more pathetic than like Rosamund Pike should be.
yeah, and
Like
so
she gets captured, and isn't she like saved by Rosamund
yeah,
Pike?
Rosamund Pike saves her. Like,
Um,
well, that's the thing too. It's like I mean, it turns out, that's the impression I got. She kind of like fends off Macon Blair in the beginning, and he's just like, and she's like, fuck off, and and then Macon Blair leaves because he seems intimidated by her. But then later on, when they're trying to scramble and get out, and they get caught while they're trying to run away. She all of a sudden, she's like a normal person, and it's like, okay, that it's scary because like they're like breaking into her house trying to kidnap her to use her as like collateral or something, and like that's obviously scary, but then that's when the realization sets in that, oh, she's not like a super capable bodyguard. It's kind of like the more outwardly tough one in the relationship, less cool headed. She's like the hothead, um, and then they try to kill her. Like basically, after they try to kill Rosamund Pike, they try to kill her as well. And once again, like they totally um, inept goons leave her in one of the houses that Rosamund Pike is keeping from one of her scammed old people, and just leave her in there with the gas on. And it's just kind of like, oh yeah, it'll blow up eventually. And like Rosamund Pike has time to think about it, drive there, find her, and pull her out all on her own, and then it blows up. And this is basically what sets into motion Rosamund Pike developing these abilities. Sudden, like,
isn't it weird? Isn't it weird that they don't kill Rosamund Pike and her girlfriend to stage the death so that there's less attention brought to their murders, but they have no issue going into the hospital guns blazing.
yeah, yeah, and they don't make sure. Like, it's like, I don't know, sure you want to make it look natural, but at least confirm. Like, hang out in front of your car to make sure the actual house blows up. To make sure the job gets done instead of just like look at Chick-fil-A. It's just it really breaks through any kind of reasonable suspension of disbelief time and time
Mhm.
again, and it's really disappointing. And it seems to be that like we alluded to how she seems to have some sort of bad history with her mother, but then and they also okay, and this is the biggest problem with me is for me with this movie is that they try to make you empathize with Rosamund Pike. It seems like they're trying to get you to root for her throughout it.
Girl
It seems
boss.
yeah, it seems like they're trying. Yeah, exactly. They're trying to like girl boss a horrific person. Um,
There's
and
nothing wrong with girl bosses, just full disclosure.
yeah, we're two relatively straight cis guys. So don't we're obviously we're not women. I but something bothered me about how, and I said once again I'm a guy saying this, but there's something that bothered me about how they try to spin Rosamund Pike as being like, I as a woman will not be intimidated by a man. You know how many men have tried to intimidate me? I will continue to ruin the lives of old people, women, old people, and men, old people. I don't discriminate there. I will ruin their lives, and you're not going to do anything to stop me. And it's kind of, I don't know. It's like I said, maybe I'm missing something. It's because I'm not a woman. Like that's entirely possible, sure. But it really feels like they're trying to sell that as like empowering, and I find that to be just kind of really like a weird choice. It's like empowering, like like the running joke that's kind of tired at this point of like, oh, we need more female drone operators, like like bombing children in the Middle East. That's not compelling. I don't know anyone I think who finds that compelling. No women I know in my life. I think feel like, empowered by that depiction. But that's kind of how they try to sell it, and eventually that's like kind of how they try to get you on board for the latter half of the movie. It seems like they're trying to like get you in this arc of being like really hating Rosamund Pike, but then going like, yeah, but at least she's not a mob boss, you
It's
know,
kind of weird,
who
right?
loves his
Isn't it?
mom, and you don't really
Like,
see, you don't see
yeah,
them harming normal people. That's the other thing too. It's like
yeah.
it's like you see them like, oh yeah, they're just like like killing people and doing awful shit to other people. You don't see any of that. You don't see like what kind of negative effect they're having on society, which like maybe would balance it out and go like, oh yeah, I hope these two people kill each other. I was like hoping Peter Dinklage just like killed Rosamund Pike unceremoniously.
So I was kind of thinking that the direction the movie would go was Rosamund Pike puts the woman in the elder care facility.
Peter Dinklage's
Peter
mom.
Dinklage, yeah, Peter Dinklage gets pissed and then kills Rosamund Pike's girlfriend, and then Rosamund Pike would then make it her life's mission to basically ruin Peter Dinklage, which I feel like would give proper motivation.
Mm-hmm.
But like I don't know, like you said, Peter Dinklage didn't do anything negative to Rosamund Pike.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that was not okay. That was unprovoked. Let's I'll put
Well,
that out
yeah, he
there.
tried to kill her, but it was just like it was also
But it was provoked.
yeah, yeah. It feels within given that they're both in the criminal world at that point, it's kind of like yeah, all, yeah, fair play for two criminals. Like you tried to negotiate, it didn't work out, so we're gonna off you now. It doesn't feel like it's like, oh, you've like you've screwed me over. It's just like, no, you played your cards wrong in a criminal setting, and the stakes are higher then. Anyways, I don't know. I don't think we should spend too much time on this because I don't think this is like super deep and worthy of comment on.
Not a
But
compelling movie.
yeah, it's not. Yeah, because and then it ends with basically just like she then screws him over, um, has this whole contrived process to make him a John Doe, like basically ODs him on heroin in a park, and that makes him a John Doe because he has no identification. She becomes his guardian and basically threatens to take over his life too if he doesn't give her what she wants. And then he goes, "Sure, I'll give you what you want. Fine, you've beaten me. However, how about we go into business together?" And she goes, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, I actually respect you for some reason after you've totally put me in the most undignified position humanly possible, being naked and overdosed in a park and being found that I'm a mob boss, and you also put my mom in a fucking high security nursing home. But I want to go into business with you because we can make a lot of money." And she goes, "Okay." And you think I don't once again I don't know why I thought this at this point. I thought that it was going to be like a plan of Peter Dinklage to be like, "I'm just kidding. Like I'm going to use that business idea, but I don't need you anymore," and then like unceremoniously kill her. Nope. They actually go into business together. She's incredibly successful. She makes a ton of money. They have her on all the financial news shows. And then at the very end, what gets there? It's Macon Blair from the beginning, where they introduce you to her scheme and her scam. And he shows up and he's like, "Hey, remember me?" And he shoots her and she dies. And that's her comeuppance. However, she finally saw amazing success. Probably left her girlfriend all of her wealth, and so there isn't really any kind of comeuppance for her, or for Peter Dinklage. It's kind of like, yeah, these terrible people just they want it all, and
Yeah,
I don't know who you're supposed to root for.
that was like the movie's that was like the movie's poor way of saying it was her greed that took it too far, and
Except it wasn't like even like it was like her normal scamming that.
yeah,
And like it's not even like poetic, and it feels like a poor man's like Coen Brothers movie. Like the way shit goes down, it kind of feels like they're trying to do like a Fargo thing or something, and it doesn't quite coalesce. It never feels. It just feels like underbaked. Like it feels like they tried to rush it because they saw it as like a really timely and fresh premise for a movie.
well, Fargo builds it up throughout that season, and then this movie
Well,
just
I meant the
is
movie,
like,
the original movie.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing that like Fargo still builds it up over the entire of the movie. But this movie just has the character at the beginning and then the
Mhm.
end. There's no connection really.
No character
It's
changes. Like no,
it's cheap. It's the cheap like gotcha that
yeah.
you thought I wouldn't come back moment. Like um,
It's like they're
it's
playing.
cheap.
Yeah, they're just like, playing their part. Like no character really changed. Like Peter Dinklage kind of changes maybe, but like no one learns anything. No one actually sees real consequences for their behavior. And like I
Except
said,
for
like
the last 10 seconds.
like she dies, but even that's just like, yeah, but she ended up with everything she wanted, and she like kind of showed a disregard for her own life anyway. So it's like, she still kind of won. I don't know. It's just she I think at one point she's like, yeah, I'm not afraid of death, like whatever.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Yeah, it's just unsatisfying. It's a
My
shame.
my issue with this movie, and we can wrap up, but
Fuck this
my
movie.
issue with this movie is one, it, it could have explored like a more literal. It could have been a more literal examination of like the elder care stuff, like the forced elder care.
Yeah, like the system, like spend more time in court. Like the stuff with Chris Messina in court was compelling.
Yeah. On that note, like a much better movie that does kind of explore that
Hmm.
topic, but not exactly as unsane. But that's more about mental health facilities where people are forced to stand there against their will wrongfully, which is kind of along the same lines as this, like the elder care stuff.
Did you watch Invisible Man?
Uh, oh, I did, yeah,
I'd say that kind of does it. It's super heavy-handed in that, but yeah, still
yeah.
better.
Unsane is much better, so
Yeah,
everyone go watch that.
and even
But
Invisible Man is a better female empowerment sounds like incel language, but a woman taking control of her life and over her like
yeah.
abuser
Hmm.
far better than anything in this.
So yeah, my
That's not
issue,
very
like
good even. Like I mean, it's fine, but like.
yeah, like this movie, like it doesn't do anything well.
Mhm.
It doesn't examine elder care facilities like that entire topic well. It doesn't do the mob storyline well. It doesn't do like the John Wick. It's just not believable for me, like the John Wick stuff.
There's a couple seconds of interesting action, but
Yeah,
not enough to carry it
seconds.
through the whole movie.
But yeah, it makes me ask myself, why wouldn't I just go watch something else instead of this? If I wanted to watch something like John Wick, I would go watch John Wick. If I wanted to watch something that is handling the topic of like forced facilitation somewhere, I would watch something else. Like, there's no incentive for me to watch this.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, I know a good way to describe how this made me feel. So, recently there was a trend, I guess you could say, like on TikTok, and I think it spread to Twitter and stuff too. But basically, talking about this practice now that is like within the wake up and hustle 100 emoji kind of people who are like trying to get rich quick basically, and
Entrepreneurs.
yeah, quote unquote entrepreneurs. But it was basically a scheme where people some of these people realize that you can go in and you can basically buy off people's debt, what's it called, um their delinquent taxes, like the debt that they owe to the state or the county or whatever. And then if they don't pay you back, if they don't if people who live in that house don't pay back the person who paid off the debt, these hustlers, these
Do they
100
take the
entrepreneurs,
house?
they can take the house and evict them. And it was this whole thing of like, yeah, so you can get a $30,000 house for $400 or whatever. People don't have $400 to pay off their taxes for their home. Um, and it was people trying to justify it. It was people trying to say like, oh, if they don't do it, the bank will. So I'm trying to get mine. Hustle, hustle, hustle. And it got turned into this thing of just like of people who are ostensibly of the same class and should have the same interests eating each other. And it was just really gross to see people bend over backwards to try and justify it. And ultimately, that's what it feels like they're almost saying in this, in a way. Like, I don't think it's as direct, but they're kind of trying to justify Rosamund Pike's actions, and they're just like, well, she's just doing whatever she can to get ahead as like a white woman. And it's like, and she's gay too, but like, it's not really like, she doesn't face oppression for that in the movie. But they don't even imply that. They imply that she's like broad general trauma in her past, having to deal with, and her status as a woman. And it feels a little bit like trying to justify taking someone's house because they can't afford it, saying, oh well, someone else would have done it if I didn't. So it might as well be
I
me.
guess. I guess. I guess if the movie did one thing good, it's that it didn't make a big show of her being gay,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That felt pretty casual. They did make a big
That's
fucking show of her vaping though. Jesus fucking Christ, it was annoying. Like, no one will ever not look like a fucking idiot or a douchebag vaping on screen. I'm sorry. Like, cigarettes are fucking stupid. We shouldn't be idolizing them anymore, but they still look infinitely better on screen than vaping. Vaping will always look like a douchebag thing, and it like did not. I don't know. It kind of fit for her like her scammer vibe, but it's not like I don't know. It feels like it's being used as though they think that it has the same effect of cigarettes on screen, and I don't think it does.
Stupid. Get used to it.
Anyway, yeah, fuck this movie. We're done with it. Um,
Rate it
oh yeah. Dan, what's your rating?
4 out of 10.
I gave it a 2 out of 5 on my fucking letterboxd. So, yeah,
Let's talk about something kind of good now.
yeah. WandaVision is like I'd say like 75% pretty good. You might give it a lower score, but I think overall, like,
Yeah, we could talk about that.
yeah, no, go for it. Give your thoughts. I think you have like more complicated and developed.
Yeah, so like we mentioned before that we kind of already talked about this, but the audio got fucked up. So I guess I
We can go through like
am-
our primary points. Like obviously our conversation isn't going
yeah,
to be as genuine as it was the first time, but we'll try to give like
yeah,
the most important aspects of
yeah. So I enjoyed the first 3 episodes or so. I'm gonna say. I thought
nine.
it
Ooh,
was.
1/3 only. Ooh,
Is it 9
yeesh.
episodes?
That's 9.
Okay, yeah. So I enjoyed the first 3 episodes decently. I think it was refreshing to me because I'm not the biggest Marvel or DC fan. I like to call it cape shit.
And neither of us are.
Um,
We're kind of like there's obviously like the standout ones that are good, but broadly speaking, we're not like Marvel stands or anything.
yeah. So I've been sick of this Marvel formula of like one-liners, uh, like explosions. So uh, I don't know. I'm just kind of sick of the superhero popularity in the film industry right now because I feel like all of the movies aren't really distinguishable from each other
Yeah.
in any meaningful way. So when I watched the first 3 episodes, I thought it was pretty refreshing where
Same.
it's like, whoa, this is like different from typical Marvel schlock.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, there's no, I guess there are one-liners because it's imitating sitcoms, but it fits in that scenario for me.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's justified in world. Like it's not
yeah,
it's not when they turn and do it to the camera. It's because it's referencing the actual material that they're drawing from. It's not because it's doing the Marvel quip thing. You know.
yeah. It's supposed to be cringy in this scenario because sitcoms are cringy.
Yeah, if you want to describe it that way, that's yeah, sure.
Yeah, maybe cringy is not like the right word, but like cheesy, I guess.
I mean, yeah, it's referential in that way. So
Yeah,
I think there's like a certain amount of camp that like is avoidable because it's like it's something referencing something which was like referencing everything before. It's just
yeah,
it's very meta overall. We can
yeah.
put it that way, I guess.
I wouldn't say I loved the first 3 episodes because, and that's probably my own personal bias because the show that I watched before WandaVision was Mr. Robot,
Yeah,
which
poison the well
is,
a little bit.
yeah, it's quite possibly my favorite TV show of all time now.
Damn,
I
get
don't even
fucked
know
Breaking
what
Bad.
would.
Get
Yeah, I
fucked
don't know. My
Fargo.
tops, my tops would probably be like Fargo, The Sopranos, Mr. Robot.
Bro, True Detective season 1. Come on, dude. Talking about that with you.
Hot take: I'm not huge on True Detective,
Oh, that first
but
season is so good. Season 3 is really good too. Season 2 is fine. If you don't like season 2, you're being an asshole about it. It's fine. It was a little rushed. Vince Vaughn is actually good in that.
yeah. But yeah. So I watched Mr. Robot, and Mr. Robot had a sitcom episode, not an entire episode, but like I'm gonna probably say like half the episode
Like a
was a
sequence.
parody. Yeah, like a parody of a sitcom where Rami Malek is very, very confused at what the hell is going on because it's very obvious he's in a sitcom. And my issue with the first 3 episodes of WandaVision is I feel like 90% of the episodes were complete sitcoms, and then 10% of the episodes were, I guess, meaningful sequences advancing the storyline of Wanda kind of realizing that something's very off.
It was too much of just like
And
sitcoms playing out the sitcom premises. It kind of seems like what
Yep, and I'm not a huge fan of sitcoms. I feel like a lot of sitcoms. Well, I mean that's another topic, but in general, it's like they kind of lean on like the laugh track to be funny when it's not actually funny.
Yeah, well, yeah. Look at Big
Um,
Bang Theory. Remove the laugh track and let's see how actually
yeah,
funny it is.
yeah. So that I would say that's why I didn't like love the first three episodes. I thought they were good, but it was just a bit. It wasn't. It was a lot of. It wasn't a lot of story progression, and it was basically it was a sitcom for three episodes.
Yeah.
Um, and then after that, I don't exactly remember what episode that whole I guess Jimmy Woo kind of stuff happens. I love Jimmy Woo's character, but it kind of devolves into that typical Marvel schlock that I was
Yeah.
talking about that I'm not a big fan of.
What we kind of said last time was that like it seemed like inside of the dome, inside Westbrook or whatever, um,
Yeah.
that's like a Marvel movie and just long, but then outside of it, all the stuff with like Jimmy Woo and Kat Dennings and I forget her name, Rambo, Lieutenant Rambo, whatever her status
Oh
is,
yeah, yeah.
her rank. Um, it's that feels like Agents of Shield, CW hero show.
Agents of Shield, we haven't watched it, or I haven't watched it. It
I watched
looks
two
like a really
episodes. It was cringy. I
it looks
couldn't.
awful.
It's very
It
network
looks
TV.
awful.
Apparently, it gets better.
Yeah.
People have told me it gets better. I don't really have the pay. It's the kind of thing where it's like, no, I swear it gets good. You just have to watch like the first 4 seasons. There's 25 episodes a season. I'm like, okay, I'm glad.
I don't
I'm
believe
glad
that.
there's an audience for it and whatever. But
Yeah.
um,
So like the last two episodes went full shit show of let's
if I go that far,
explode. Oh, we're gonna explode. Like everything's gonna explode.
iffy CG, laser battles, beam fights.
900, yeah, 900 cuts per like 5 seconds.
There was a little bit of creative stuff in there, but
Yeah,
like there were really I think creative parts for both the Vision fight and the Wanda and Agatha fight that I think like, oh, that's cool, like it's true to their characters, but then it's like all surrounded by like needless shit that like telling, and it's kind of like, okay, it feels like we're padding
honestly,
it out here.
yeah, I would have been happy if the entire show. So because the first three episodes for me were really out of the grain for Marvel,
Hmm.
I would have been I would have been satisfied if the entire show did not have a single action sequence.
No, absolutely. So I feel totally the same.
I would have loved if the entire show was just Wanda with no overarching villain and her by herself coming to terms with her grief and Vision's death and the townspeople kind of
Dealing with like the guilt of
um
what she's done to the people who live there, like
yeah.
yeah, I'll say like I want to mention this too. I just want to say real quick that like I think I'm much more forgiving of the sitcom portions than Ken is.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. It was interesting watching with my folks too because my parents had watched some of like the older sitcoms that were referenced in it, so like stuff. But they also like my mom watched like the Dick Van Dyke Show. Both of them watched the Van Dyke Show, and they really liked how true to those sitcoms that they were. Like it was they really did get it down to like a really granular amount of detail. How loyal and faithful it was to those originals, and I think that was really cool. So I want to give them full credit for that. I think that was really cool. I love the Malcolm in the Middle episode. That's like that was like my first sitcom, and also I think maybe the best sitcom actually. That one was really good. I thought the Modern Family, like I also I want to praise Elizabeth Olsen thing because she nails every single character sitcom referencing. Like it's 1-to-1. She nails Julie Bowen in like the Modern Family episode. It was not an Office episode. It was a Modern Family
It
episode.
wasn't Office. It
People
wasn't
kept
the
calling it
Office Reddit.
an Office episode. It was it was Modern Family, and obviously all these sitcoms are inspired by each other. Modern Family wouldn't have happened if The Office hadn't existed first, but it very clearly was referenced because Elizabeth Olsen was doing Julie Bowen to it like a T, and like a lot of timely sitcoms influenced each like period, each episode, that encompassed like a decade or so worth of sitcoms, but clearly primarily that the one with her in the robe and everything being depressed was Modern. But I
There's
thought
also like The Office isn't a family like show, which is
yeah,
why
exactly.
I don't know why
The
would
whole point
anyone
is that it's
think it's
focused on
The
a family.
Office.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But anyways, I think
I digress.
I think those were solid. I think Catherine Hahn was fantastic. I think that she was very compelling as like a side character, and a lot of people had their suspicions from the beginning. I don't think it was super well hidden. the fact that she was Agatha. But I think that was fine. I always like Evan Peters. I find him to be very enjoyable to watch. I think he's pretty charismatic. It was very disappointing that his character kind of ended up being a nothing, at least as far as we know so
It
far.
was a dick joke.
Yeah, all for a dick joke, to make it seem like they were finally pulling in like mutants and the Fox X-Men movies to the Marvel universe, and not so much.
Yeah,
Kind of just like a throwaway thing. And it seems like they kind of left it open, so maybe they could do something with it if they want. I hope they bring him back. He's like one of the better parts of the Fox X-Men.
yeah.
I don't think it's realistic to bring back McAvoy and Fassbender as X, Professor X, and Magneto, even though I think their dynamic was also they should have been gay. So I saw something the other day. It's like, yeah, like even they thought they the characters were gay for each other. I think they kind of should have been. That felt very like fitting. But anyways, that's besides the point. Um, I think the first 7 episodes were really solid. I enjoyed them. Like I said, I could, if there was like almost no stuff outside the town, I would have been okay with that too. Just because I don't think like I said, that all felt kind of cornier. The leader of Sword was just like kind of just a whatever villain. It's like typical evil white guy that I feel like Marvel has
Yeah,
way too many of. Like Robert
I was
Redford kind of did that to like the maximum degree already. Why we
I
need?
was saying I was kind of saying that that's like the typical character in movies where it's an older white dude and he's like, "No, I'm in the military. How dare you
Uh,
suggest a logical route? I'm gonna do this
I
because
want violence. I
I
want
need-"
weapon.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and so yeah, I think it was yeah, it was so. But yeah, I think all the stuff within, I think all the stuff around Paul Bettany telling, I think their argument is really really great. When Vision's kind of regaining some of his self awareness and realizing that like things probably aren't as they seem, and kind of that argument where they're both floating and yelling at each other, I thought that was a really great scene. And at the end, just I don't know, it feels like the like big. First of all, the I think I might be stealing this from Cosmonaut Variety Hour on YouTube, Marcus. But this whole idea of like the giant Jeff Bridges robot problem, which is basically the Marvel issue of having the main villain be a just like a color swapped version of the protagonist, and saying like, okay, so we have Good Witch, quote unquote Good Witch of Wanda, even though it's kind of like she's kind of in a gray area. We need to have Bad Witch, which is Agatha, and like they basically have almost indistinguishable powers. It's kind of vague what they can do. Oh, we have regular vision, we have good vision, and we have bad vision, and then they have to have a fight. And I just think it feels like such a safe move to have that. I think that yeah, you're right. Having just Wanda deal with her grief, or even just having only Agatha or only White Vision be the main like villain, quote unquote. I thought the White Vision thing should have been wrapped up way sooner. I was musing that it would be funny if it ended up being a non-issue. Like Wanda was like, "Oh, cool, sick! Like Vision's body's working again. Let me just like eat my projection of him. That's like my memory of him into that body, and we'll be all set." And that's almost what happens. And I did like how the two Visions just talk things out, essentially, and that's how uh, the Vision from WandaVision convinces the reanimated Vision to go back to being himself. It seems more or less. And I thought that was cool. And I think that Wanda using like her little like, oh, I'm gonna send you to your worst nightmare powers that like was her introduction. On going back and using that again was compelling. Her kind of being stealthy instead of it just being like her and Agatha throwing cards at each other or whatever.
Was that what she said? Was that a callback to Age of Ultron?
Yeah, like that's what she does.
I have
Whenever
honestly, I have no memory of that movie because it was so bad.
yeah, when everyone has nightmare mode, Tony Stark sees like the future where everyone's dead except for him. She sends Hulk into the rampage. Thor sees like visions of himself in like a pool or whatever. Like all
Mm.
like it's basically showing them like, oh, and then for Captain America it was like him having like a calm life essentially, which wasn't really executed on. They kind of went back on that one, but it's kind of cool. Like she hadn't really used her powers in that way since then. Um,
Yeah,
so I thought that was like a nice a return to form in that. Um,
I didn't buy the villains. So like my issue with Agatha is And so when I watched the trailer for the show on YouTube, I watched, I'm gonna say 10 seconds of the trailer, and I was like, the villain is gonna be another witch who is manipulating the environment. The person who's doing this is not Wanda.
And you
And I
clocked
think,
you clocked Catherine Hahn immediately, right?
yeah, and my issue with that is the first few episodes without Agatha had like a sense of mystery, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
where
Intrigue.
the intrigue of the show is what is going on with Wanda? Why, what is going on? Why is she in a sitcom? The second you show your very obvious villain,
Mm-hmm.
that intrigue to me is Thor snapped right out of the show.
Yeah.
It the second I saw her character, I lost so much interest. There was no mystery to me, and I think the character of Agatha kind of, I don't know. I think for me, falls back to this Marvel issue of really shitty, shallow villains.
It's kind of a waste too. It's kind of like the Mads Mikkelsen thing too. It's like you have someone who could play a really like convincing villain. I think Catherine Hahn like played what she had very well, but then ultimately it's kind of like they don't have much to do. You know, it's kind of like okay, you have to go there and be like some sort of huge existential threat, and then nothing comes of it. You know, she's basically just like
Yeah,
a method to like dig into. That's what I think the right narrative choice was, and the choice that they ended up making was making it that yeah, it was Wanda the whole time. It wasn't Agatha making this world or like using Wanda as like an amplifier or something to like create this reality. It was just Wanda, and then Agatha was like trying to take advantage of the situation. Which sure, I think it could have been just as compelling without her though. I think it's a distraction. I think Catherine Hahn's really good. Maybe they could have used her later. Um, it wasn't necessary. Like the same way I don't think having like White Vision was necessary, or at least not until the very end. Like like I think that I wouldn't have been like, oh, what happened here, without like minimal outside like exposition of like, oh, what's going on outside the walls of everything. And it would mean less Jimmy Woo, which would be tragic, but it still would have worked out well. And just like want to come to terms, even like Vision being like forcing him to say like you need to kill me and our kids because it's not worth this reality, and you keeping it up is not worth have it make it take some toll on her, and her willing to engage with that, and it takes Vision talking her out of it and say like it's not worth the suffering of the people you're subjecting to this. And that could be really, but it would mean that there
yeah,
wouldn't be like it maybe wouldn't be a huge major action set piece. Maybe you have a fight between Wanda and Vision, that could be like something, and then have it end and it can be just as tragic and whatever, but it would
more
also
tragic.
yeah, it would just give them less chance to set up stuff. And I think that's
Yeah.
also what kind of like um makes me a little bit um what's like disenchanted with it, is that just the fact that we still have to be like setting up dominoes throughout the whole thing. It's just like okay, we have to be setting up Rambo as an Avenger now. We have to be sure that Agatha isn't totally out of the picture, so she can be like a villain or just like come into play somehow later.
I
We gotta make
guess
sure. We gotta make sure like White Vision, like ooh, what's going on with White Vision? He doesn't really play a role in the end. He's just like gets convinced and then fucks off. And
Yeah. I guess that's like the double-edged sword of Marvel, right?
mm-hmm.
Where it's really cool seeing these connections and how everything ties them together in this universe because like I don't know, what was that? Like Infinity War?
It's fun seeing them come to fruition. It's not
That was like
fun watching them get set up. you know.
yeah. Yeah, so that's like the double-edged sword of it's cool seeing the payoff, but then when I see the connections being made in real time, I'm kind of like groaning internally. Yeah. Oh, let's talk about the kids.
Yeah, they weren't great, and that's one of the weaknesses is that they really rely on them, and then also they make this whole big deal inside the dome, going like they're real, it's real, Vision is real, and the kind of it's all kind of predicated on oh yeah, like the original story that ends up not being true is that Wanda stole Vision's body and reconstructed him. It's like the part of the Mind Stone that lives within her, whatever that means. That's what Vision in the dome is, and the body was there the whole time, and they turned that Vision into White Vision. Um,
Yeah.
but they like, and it just seems like they kind of like go back on their setup and oh, actually no, they're not real, and disappear. It's just it's kind of waffling. The kid they didn't need to focus on the kids as much as they are. Like I think that it actually would have been more compelling if like they were like kids who didn't really talk that much, and then
The kids felt like emotional crutches to me.
just have them deal with Evan Peters as Quicksilver, and like that would be
Yeah.
entertaining.
I don't know. The kids to me felt like uh, you as the audience should feel sad because she's losing her kids, and it's sad because they're her kids, but there's no actual connection with me to those kids. I don't know. It's just hard for me to care about characters that I've only seen for like 5 episodes and they don't get that much screen time. And I think that's something that movies and TV shows they kind of fall back on it.
It's just the fact that they
Because
are kids that's supposed to be compelling,
yeah,
not that like not anything specific about.
yeah, it's like, oh, they're kids, or oh, it's a woman, so you should feel bad that
Or well,
this is happening.
okay. I mean, I don't know if it's just the one thing. I think that it's like the
I'm more talking about Tenet, where
yeah, no, exactly, yeah, tenants
uh,
yeah, and the woman has to be like everything ever has ever existed or will exist is going. That also means
including
my
my
son,
kid.
including my son, and it's like this is like okay, Christopher Nolan really understands women clearly. No, but I think it's also like the whole thing of like it was like I don't know, what is it? It's like a an example or like basically something that speaks to how Hollywood seems to think people work, where it's like, look at this rock, watch it get smashed by a sledgehammer, and then you say like, oh yeah, the audience doesn't care at all. But then you take that rock, and the man raises the sledgehammer above his head, and you tell the audience, and that rock has a family, and they go, and then the rock gets smashed, and then you go, oh my god, what will his family do? And that assigns all this weight to the moment when there might not have been before,
Yeah,
and that kind of feels like what this was just kind of played out, and I think that like it would have been like I feel like almost just like a like a cradle, not a cradle, what's it called, like a baby carrier, like, and you don't even see the baby and just someone carrying one, that's like more compelling. like and then maybe you play generic baby noises out of it, and it's like, oh no, I almost fell into the street with it or something. Like that is more compelling than like having, it's like this thing. I don't expect kids to be good actors. I think that's like I think when kids are really good actors, there's something weird about that kid, and hopefully they
shout
turn
out to
out
the
well.
kid from Minari.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, hopefully that kid turns out well. But I think like it often indicates like some a lot of those kids end up being really weird adults, and so I don't hold that against them. But I think when you choose to lean on it so much, it kind of inevitably is going to take you out of it, because these kids aren't going to be as good of actors as their adult peers who have had to hone their craft. So forcing us to rely on it, I think it would have been far more beneficial to just let the kids exist in the background, have her like boss them around or whatever, make it clear that she cares a lot about them, and the extent of their like on screen like dialogue, even Evan Peters, to show like his like kind of like shithead uncle, and that would have been.
Yeah.
But
Uh,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, decent overall. Probably one of the better. Like it was. Like I said, I think it was really refreshing. It broke that normal Marvel formula. It wasn't
I
at least
just
in the beginning. At the ending, it kind of fell back onto it. But for the most part, it was at least breaking away from that.
I just don't think it warrants the praise that it's been getting, to be honest.
We talked about this last time too. Yeah, and yeah, to put it. Yeah, I think for us who've like consume a lot of media of all kinds, it's kind of like this isn't the first time we've been like emotionally invested in something like this. The point that I made last time is just that for a lot of people, who wouldn't be going to the movies otherwise, go because of Marvel. They're exposed to like Marvel is like the long and short of their their movie watching library in their head. It's a little bit like that, that meme of I feel like so cringy saying that, but it's the meme of being like the guy who's only seen Boss Baby watching, Tenet, and goes, I'm getting some Boss Baby vibes from this. It's it's that this is all they have to draw from. A lot of the time, it's way more people are watching Marvel movies than would be watching any other movie at any time. And so, no, the same way they're being drawn to this, these are people who probably haven't watched really um, well produced, well written, directed TV, and this meets like a far higher standard than typical network TV shows. There are people who are probably subscribing to um, Disney Plus who maybe hadn't been subscribed to like other streaming services, or hadn't like watched every HBO series that's really good. and they're seeing like well written dialogue like to this certain standard for the first time, and it's like wow, it's like it's like a come to Jesus moment. This is a new thing for them, and so hopefully it pushes them towards watching new stuff. I'm hard pressed to like I feel a little superior, but like I don't,
I
I
don't think
but
that'll
but
happen.
I don't want to like I'm nervous to like embrace it too much, like slightly dogmatic and all that. But
I will fully embrace it.
yeah, yeah, you can fully call them idiots. I think that they're just like underinformed, and hopefully this can be like an entry point for them to watch better media in general. I just think like maximizing your time watching stuff that's like hopefully as artful if not more. Um, but I don't know, take on it.
My take on that is I feel like I guess the writing of the show is it's also a testament to the quality of the show as it is to the general intelligence and attention span, I guess, of the average Marvel viewer. Where, I mean, it's basically what you said, where these people are being introduced to a level of writing that isn't necessarily great, but it's great for their little bubble. Does that make sense?
No, that's that. I think you might have
You know,
articulated it better. So that's
where
good.
you compare this to something like I don't know, you compare this to Captain America, like those movies. It's great. This show's fantastic.
It's paced a lot slower too, so I think it's to people's credit that they kept watching and they were engaged week to week.
Yeah, but you then compare it to the bigger spectrum of movies like I don't know, let's look at the great TV shows, right? Like the greatest ones. The Mr. Robot, The Sopranos,
Breaking Bad, Better Call
The
Saul.
Wire, yeah, Breaking Bad. Um, compared to those shows, the writing in WandaVision is adequate, I would say.
Yeah, I think that probably WandaVision is as good as you can get within the Marvel in terms of like writing and stuff. Like, and it can be it's a good thing, but also can be kind of depressing. But I just feel like the limitations and boundaries set by like all the restrictions that they're under by having to fit into this greater universe, being a Disney property and all this stuff, having to appeal to a certain demographic, it limits them. And
Yeah,
like this
yeah,
is about as good as I feel like I can expect from it, and I think that's fine. Like I think that's okay. Like I don't think that it should be art house, you know, grading, very narrow appeal kind of thing. I think it's as good. I think it's like on the upper in the upper tiers of how a broadly targeted piece of media be. Like I think it's up there.
yeah. We kind of touched upon this on the first episode where I kind of went on that rant about art forms. I guess particularly like TV and gaming and movies have like regressed
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the public being aware of, I guess, like more art cinema, or in this case, art TV, which I I can go on that topic later, but yeah, so it's kind of related where I feel like this is what is considered great to the average TV viewer,
Mm-hmm.
but objectively, I wouldn't put it at that level of great.
Yeah, in the greater continuum, and I think that's a good transition into, as we reach to the end here, to give this our rating overall, and also explain how we rate stuff, because I don't think we talked about it last. It's like a really important thing that we talked about when we first tried to record this episode, and so yeah, like I would give it probably like 7 out of 10 overall, like probably like a solid 7. I said light 7, strong 7, light 8 last time. I think solid 7 is probably where I'm at as of this moment. But I would say that I tend to rate stuff within like kind of like little bubbles, if that makes sense. Basically in relation to each other, in relation to similar pieces of media. So I'm thinking of this within the continuum of Marvel movies, of other superhero movies and TV shows. I don't watch a lot of superhero TV shows because a lot of it's like CW stuff, and I have other stuff I'd rather
Supergirl.
spend time on. Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, I heard Superman and Lois is actually decent. I don't know. Um, and I'm not like that's the thing. I don't have like a lot of background and history with comic book stuff to like not to the same degree as others that would like really push me to like engage with every single one. but from Marvel movies and stuff that I've seen and similar TV shows at a similar level, I think this is like 7 out of 10 within that regard. So I tend to rate stuff a little more highly than Dan, just because I'm rating stuff in relation to each other in like little subgroups, and so keep that in mind when I give my ratings. What's your take, Dan?
I'm gonna give it 5 out of 10, and
It sounds so
for that,
brutal on the ear. I think that most people, your explanation makes sense. Please give your explanation.
yeah, no, 5 out of 10 sounds really like no mercy, and I get it because that's how I used to think of it. But I kind of adopted this scale from YMS, who's a YouTuber. Who,
Yourmoviesucks.org.
yep, I think
Adam.
he's one of the best reviewers. But his scale is basically 5 being average, and everything below that is bad. Everything above that is decent to excellent.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, that kind of made sense to me. That kind of logic using that scale, because I think we're almost conditioned in America to think of 5 out of 10 as failing because of our school system and how
Yeah.
grades like work in that system.
Yeah. For reference, Dan, you should give like what a 9 or a 10 would be for you, and what like a 2 or a 3 would be for you.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say 10 out of 10. I mean, TV shows obviously would be Mr. Robot.
Yeah.
I guess like something that's like a 6 out of 10, which I find good, would be the the Devil All the Time.
Okay. Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, so 5, like generally a 5 can be like a movie or a
Mm-hmm.
TV show that's has good aspects to it, but there are also substantial negatives that drag it down to a 5 when otherwise it would have been a 6.
And then like a
That
2
makes
is like New Moon, right? Where it's like I
yeah.
I would I would rate it like higher personally, just because of like the meme potential from it. I think
Maybe
it's
Glass.
funny. Oh God, no, Glass is a 1.
Glass
Glass is
being
a
2.
1. Glass is a 1 for okay. We'll talk about. I think we should come back to wrap back
Was it
around
an
to it
M
at
Night
some point.
episode?
I haven't watched that much M Night stuff actually, but I mean just for the sake of. I mean, I've seen
Yeah.
enough. I've seen The Village. I've seen Avatar. I've seen The Visit. I've seen Unbreakable. I've seen and like obviously like a Split, and then Glass. Glass was especially bad because it was like it's such whiplash when it seems like Split like reawakens momentum that shouldn't fucking be there, and you're like, what's going on? And then Glass is just like one of the most boring movies of the last 5 years, and then it's like a wet fart.
Split's like when you eat a quesarito from Taco Bell and it's really good, and then Glass is the aftermath of that meal.
That's I mean
2 hours later.
I don't think Taco Bell's ever affected me that way. I
It
think
actually
people
never happens to me, but that's a meme, so I'm
yeah
gonna use that
yeah
meme.
that's what people talk about. Like
Yeah, it
however
never actually happens
whatever
to
gives
me.
you if you're okay if you're lactose intolerant, it's like eating your what's topical right now, your Shamrock McFlurry, and you're lactose intolerant, you don't take your lactate pills beforehand, you love it while you eat it, and then that's Split, and then
Yeah.
Glass is you in the bathroom half an hour later.
Yeah.
I guess on the note of diarrhea, we can wrap up this episode. We have a lot of video game stuff we want to talk about too. I think we might bank up a couple episodes here in the next couple days, and then so we can upload them together. Have a little that we can build a little bit of a library here before we get into a more regular schedule. But yeah, we hope you guys enjoyed this week. We still ended up spending more time on I Care a Lot than I think we intended, but I think we kept saying like it wasn't a compelling movie and stuff, and in retrospect it wasn't, but we still had a lot to say because I think
It's fun to shit on bad movies.
yeah, it's frustrating when something has a potentially really strong premise that just doesn't get fully executed upon. So that at least what drove me to stick on it a little bit longer. But yeah, we definitely want to talk about more game stuff next time. We've got a lot on our mind there. We've got stuff that we've played recently that we want to talk about, and so yeah, that'll be that should be featured more heavily next time. So thank you all for listening. We really appreciate it. If you enjoy it, we're still new around here, but if you enjoy it, if you want to rate it or something, wherever you listen to podcasts, that would be really cool. Or even better if you just think you know someone who would appreciate it. send it their way, recommend us. That's always really cool. But yeah, we really appreciate it. Any kind of support, even just continuing to listen, is really awesome. So thanks a lot. You have any last words here, Dan?
Yeah. So tune in next time and stay dogmatic.
Yeah, we'll yeah, develop those opinions, harden in them, but you should still hear hear us and hear other people out. But stay strong in your own position. Thanks a lot, guys.